Movie fans, Board now back here with Rachel McDonald. So we're at the midway point, I should say, of the current Jurassic World trilogy of movies. So the second one in the trilogy, Jurassic World Fallen Kingdom from 2018. Different director this time. You've got one Antonio Bayona. Pretty good horror movie, actually. The Orphanage. I recommend that for those.
Oh, yes, I haven't seen that yet, but I've heard that it's
that was a very early film of it. He also did that film, A Monster Calls, which again was sort of horror, but a bit more of a family-friendly horror. So it's a solid CV coming into this one. So he directs this time, but Colin Trevorrow is back as a co-writer. Mm-hmm. And the setup this time is it's literally follows on from the events of the last movie. So they're kind of tearing down the theme park. But it turns out there's still dinosaurs around and on the loose. That's set up in the opening scene. And the start of the movie, they get out in the city and you start having all these political debates over them, whether you should treat them as regular animals and adhere to animal rights, whether the government should intervene in the whole situation. So you've got Claire.
Because I just add, it turns out that I just want to add that the reason they're going for the dinosaurs is because the park was built stupidly on an active volcano, and the volcano has activated and is going to pretty much destroy the island. So it's a question of, do we get the dinosaurs off the island to preserve them, or do we just leave them to go extinct again?
Claire now works for this smaller and dinosaur kind of rights company, so she's become really invested because of the events of the first movie, in the direction that they decide to go in, which is just to wash their hands of it and just leave the situation. She then kind of feels compelled to eventually go along, but she's also contacted by these characters who have a tie-in to Hammond from the first movie. So you got James Cromwell, who's was a business partner of him, but his I think it's his nephew, isn't it?
Or his assistant or his godson or something like that.
He's the guy who's really pushing this, and backed by a millionaire played by Toby Jones. But they are basically the human villains in the movie. But the Ralph Spawn character contacts Claire and asks her, pretends then he kind of is looking out for the dinosaurs and wants her to come along, and it sort of turns out then really she's eventually compelled to do it, but only if she can get Owen back. So you have stuff with them where she has to try and persuade him to come along again, and then that becomes the movie, along with her team, that they go back in and they have to try and rescue the situation. But then there's another kind of story that takes place later on in the movie as well. You do get a switch in location later on in the movie, and more with the stuff with the James Cromwell, Ralph Spawn, those characters as well. This was actually a first-time watch for me. I'd not got around to watching this. I take it you had seen this one.
Yes, I saw this one at the cinema.
Oh, you did, yeah. No, this, for whatever reason, this is the first-time watch for me. What did you think of Jurassic World Fallen Kingdom?
Okay, you know what? Knowing that this is a first-time watch for you, I'm actually curious about your thoughts. So I think I'll let you go first. What did you think of this one, watching it for the first time?
This is a really strange movie to talk about and to rate, because I think this is a really divisive movie, and I know the first movie gets quite a lot of hate, but I think this one gets even more hate.
It does, yeah.
Seems to be. And I think it's a mixed bag of a film. I think the second half of the movie works really well for the most part. I like a lot of the stuff in the second half. And then it's the first part that drags, and there's some things in the first part I really don't like. And I think it's notable then you've got a director who has a horror background, because the horror scenes in this are really good, and I would say they're the best horror scenes we've had since the original movie. That is something I would say without doubt. And it starts in the first scene. I think the way he uses shadows in that first scene, like, you know, and I know it's a little goofy because this idea of the dinosaur creeping around in the background, but I think most of these movies do that. But it's a good horror scene, is the point, the way it's set up there, them in the background and the shadows. And so I think the direction in this movie is, for most of it anyway, is really strong. And I think you get some great dinosaur things. And I think one thing I'll give it credit for is that it does actually try new things, which I do appreciate, because probably a complaint of the last film is that it does stick to the formula maybe a little bit too much. So I do appreciate that then they actually try things in this movie. They try different ideas. We'll get into them in spoilers. We can't say too much non-spoilers, but you know, like the direction of the Maisie character, for example, that was a nice little surprise, and some of the other ideas. But just to have like the back half of the movie all set in this like one house and what have you, and the stuff they do in that. So I think overall it's a solid movie, but it's definitely dragged down by the first half of the movie. And it's definitely, I think what I'm saying is, once again, it's the writing more that lets it down. You know, they've got a good director, and I think there are some good horror scenes in this, which, to me, that's an important thing to have in a Jurassic movie like that. It makes sense to make it quite sort of scary. And once again, I think the design of the dinosaurs is good. And there's some beautiful shots. I mean, we can get more into it, but there's some distinct like visual shots. I mean, obviously, an absolute heartbreaking shot is the shot when they're leaving the island, and you know the flames erupt. Of what visual storytelling can do, where you just sum everything up just by showing the shot and just the way it's framed. So it is more the writing than lets the movie down, especially in the first half. I think by and large the characters are weaker in this movie than the last movie. The last movie, there were some characters I liked and some I didn't. I think most of the characters in this I don't really like. Claire and Owen get worse in this, especially Owen. Claire I still like quite a lot, but she probably takes a little bit of a dive because she's associated with Owen, maybe. But Owen definitely gets worse in this. You know, I found their relationship once again forced, and I think they're playing with him into the action tropes even more. So this time around, that maybe Maisie might be the best of the James Cromwell I obviously like, so I like seeing him, but maybe a little bit of an underwritten role.
He doesn't have much to do, unfortunately.
And the villains are just weak. I don't. The villains don't impress me, and they're played by two actors who I like. So that's. I mean, Toby Jones is a wonderful character actor, but he's just given nothing. Like just as this one note sort of like millionaire, just blank one note. A little distracting with the accent as well, because he is like an English actor, Toby.
Okay.
And I think he does an okay job doing the American accent, but you can still tell that it's someone doing an accent. And Ralph Spawn, another actor I quite like, but his character I just think is boring. They're just pretty bland characters mostly. And I didn't like the comic relief character, you know, the Justice Smith character. I thought
Franklin. Oh, God, he was just the worst.
Very, sorry, fraudulent slip. Very annoying is what I can say. The whole, like, bug spray thing was annoying. Him sort of screeching at everything, being weaselly and wimpy.
Mm-hmm.
And again, I think this is the script. I think the comedy's pretty bad in this one. I thought the vet, the other like member of the team, wasn't
Zia.
bad.
Yeah, she was okay.
Was a little bit better.
At least she did something, you know. At least she contributed to the storyline. Franklin just flails around and basically does nothing. He's kind of useless.
Yeah, because he's another one. I know that actor's been in other things, and I think I hear good things about him in those things. So it might have just been that it's the character once again.
Yeah.
Because I could be wrong, but I'm pretty sure he's in Nash Prince.
Okay. The new reboot that's come out. Oh, okay.
I'm sure he's in that, something like that anyway. But yeah, Franklin as a character, I thought was annoying.
He's useless. Mm-hmm. Yeah, no one liked Franklin.
Yeah. So yeah, the characters for the most part are pretty weak source of the action movie style lines, because I'm thinking of the line where, because she says, "Those bastards, they lied about everything." And the other line is something like, "Well, not everything," and you see the dinosaur appear.
Yes, yeah.
Stuff like that, that feels like a one-liner from like an action movie.
Yeah.
Pretty cheesy. So the things I like in it, I really like, but then the highs are very high, where possibly they might be higher than the last movies. But then the lows that I think are lower than the last movie, so it's just a really weird movie.
Love Fallen Kingdom, and I love it because of what you've said, because it actually does something different. It's the first movie to really go, okay, we can't just do, and it does, because what's interesting is at first you think it's just going to be a repeat, with them going back to the island to rescue the dinosaurs. It feels very much like The Lost World, we're just going back to the island again and there's a disaster. And I do agree with you that first half, it particularly, I think it's really that sequence on the island where they're rescuing the dinosaurs. I think that drags the movie down more than anything else, especially when you have that long, elongated scene where Claire and Franklin are trapped in the gyrosphere, and then they go off the cliff and they end up in the water, and then Owen has to dive into the water to save them. It's like, it's too much. It's like we don't need all of this. Owen being like this close to lava and his skin not melting off, like how does that happen? There's like a lot of stuff I think on the island that doesn't quite work. But like you said, once we get off the island, once we get to the mansion, it's almost like a gothic horror. We've got this sweeping mansion with this monster that's loose, and Macy, of course, being the victim. So Macy, of course, there is a big plot reveal when it comes to her. So she's initially presented as Lockwood's granddaughter, and Lockwood apparently and Hammond had a falling out around the time she was born. And there's some very interesting reveals about Maisie that we'll find out, which actually makes her quite an interesting character. But I just think that the horror elements of this movie are so good, like you said, and finding out that the director has a horror background, that makes so much sense. The opening scene is honestly possibly my favorite opening scenes of any of the movies. I think it's so well done. I love that scene. I love when they're under the water to get the the dinosaur bone, and as they slowly back up, like you said, the use of shadows, and you just see the mosasaur coming behind them, and then you go to that beautiful wide shot and you just see the light go out. And it's like, it's so well done. I just think that whole opening scene is so good. And then all the scenes in the mansion are just so much fun. And yeah, just the fact that this movie dared to do something different. I do have some complaints, and they're very similar to yours. The characters in this are just, ugh. Owen is just so useless. Once again, his character trait is that he's cool. And we know this because there are so many times that it's used with absolutely no need for it. Like, for example, when they're on the plane and Franklin's all like, would you ride a something pound horse? And Owen's like, I rode my motorcycle through the jungle with a pack of raptors. It's like, is that necessary? Do we need to be reminded of that? No, but of course we do, because we need to remember that Owen is cool. Like I said, I agree with you. Franklin is just the most useless character. That scene where he and Claire are trapped in like the electronics room, and he's like, oh my god, it's a T-Rex, it's a T-Rex. It's just like, oh my god, shut up. He reminded me a bit of like Taya Leone's character,
Amanda,
the third one. Kind of just always screaming, always flailing, doing nothing of use. I don't even know why he was there. I'm with you. I think the villains are quite underwhelming. Like you said, Rafe Spall's character could have been interesting, but he's basically just really blah, doesn't really have any entertaining scenes. I'm with you again on Toby Jones. Sorry, you're going to say?
Well, I think the Ralph Spawn character suffers because it's so predictable that he's a villain as well from the moment he shows up on the screen.
There's no suspense or anything like that.
No,
you
he's
just know
acting
he's a dodgy guy.
Really
and I'm with you on Toby Jones. Again, another actor who was a great character actor but felt very underutilized here. So yeah, I did like the little Jeff Goldblum cameo, especially because the movie really over-promoted it as if him was going to be in the entire movie. So I like that he was. Yeah, he was only in one scene, and I think the scene they bring him in for is a very good scene. Like the fact that he's speaking, at the committees, saying that no, dinosaurs should not be allowed to stay here. I thought that was a fun little cameo. Again, we see B.D. Wong's character, Dr. Wu, again, and like you said, he doesn't really have a place in this movie. I mean, once we see the new dinosaurs they're cooking up, but it's like, why are you cooking up more dinosaurs? They don't really explain who's funding. Like, his character didn't really feel like he belonged in this movie. And I think the weakest parts of this movie are the parts on the island. There is some nice imagery, like you said. The shot of the Brachiosaurus rising up in the flames is just a beautifully sad way of showing, the end of the dinosaurs. And I don't mind the scene where they take down Blue and manage to capture her. But like I said, the overly long action scene of them going down the hill and going into the water and this and that, it's like, oh my God, okay, we get it. It's dangerous. There's dinosaurs. And it almost felt like dinosaur porn, like how many dinosaurs are we putting on the screen at one time? Like, come on. I did, however, I've watched a lot of behind the scenes stuff for this one, and they did go back to using animatronics for quite a few of the dinosaurs, and in particular, the Indoraptor, which is the new dinosaur, the new big bad dinosaur for this one. And I absolutely love the Indoraptor. I think the Indoraptor is a really interesting dinosaur, and the design of it is actually really cool.
I like it too.
Yeah, so I've seen the behind the scenes where they're using the animatronics. There's that great scene where Maisie is down in the cellars and she backs up to the Indoraptor and it reaches its claw out and kind of grabs her hair.
That's good. Was done. Again, another good horror.
That was done with a full-sized animatronic claw, things like that. And I found out, so the Indoraptor we find out is a prototype. It's not finished. And they designed it to not be finished. So if you look closely at it, it has scales missing. It has little bits and pieces like chinks in its armor, and it shakes and moves differently because it is a prototype. So I really liked the Indoraptor. I thought that was really fun. As far as the continuing characters go, I think Claire's okay in this one. I do agree that she's not quite as strong as in the first movie, but at the very least, they give her a continuing arc. We see now that she's trying to achieve redemption for what she perceives to be her faults from the first movie and her involvement in that. So I like that they've got that continuing storyline and that she's genuinely trying to atone. Her and Owen, again, like you said, their romance feels so forced. And I've actually thought, especially when you think about how this movie ends and where those two characters end up at the end of the movie, I actually thought this movie would have worked better if they were still a couple in this movie, and maybe the source of their conflict was that Claire wanted to keep working with the dinosaurs, but Owen wanted to maybe settle down and have a family. And I think that would have been a more interesting conflict, especially when you go towards the end of the film and where their characters end up. Yeah, I think it would have worked better if they'd just been together and had stayed together, as opposed to them trying to recreate that banter, back and forth, love-hate relationship. I just felt like that didn't work. And I remember when I did my reaction to the trailer and they showed those two, I remember actually saying, why am I supposed to root for these two as a couple? Like, they're a terrible couple. Why are you trying to make me feel like they should be together? I don't feel like these two people should be together, because all they do is fight. So I thought that angle was really bad. But yeah, so I agree with you. I think that this is a very interesting movie, and it can feel quite odd sometimes because it is almost like we do have a genre shift halfway through the movie. And I agree that, it comes down to the writing. So I do think the scenes on the island were dragged out way too long. I think if they'd condensed that and maybe given us a bit more time in the mansion, then the movie would have felt a bit more even. But I do really enjoy this film because, like I said, it does something new. And these movies, I mean, as much as they can be enjoyable, as much as you can just watch them as like, you know, popcorn movies, it becomes a bit repetitive, you know, over and over and over. We're on the island. The dinosaurs are going to kill us. We have to get off the island. This at least was something different. I loved, okay, we're getting into spoilers here, but I love the idea of a dinosaur auction. I just thought that was so much fun with like the cheesy looking like 80s Russian villains coming in to like bid on the dinosaurs. The prices they were going for were way too low. Like $4 million for a dinosaur, you can buy a house for that, dude. I'm thinking more like 4 billion, but the idea of a dinosaur auction with all of these evil types, that was
yeah,
fun.
I guess it was quite entertaining. I sort of maybe thought that was one of the weaker scenes from the, but no, I think because it's dinosaurs and they're riffing off that sort of a scene from other movies. Yeah.
Especially with the Indoraptor and Maisie, and the scenes that we get where, you know, they're being stalked around the mansion, and we have so many great scenes, so many tense scenes. There's a fantastic shot of like the Indoraptor on top of the house, like howling at the moon, like it's like a werewolf or something. Like I said, it's like something straight out of a gothic horror, and it's just really, really fun.
For Owen and Claire might have been better, but the problem is I just don't want them as a couple anyway.
No,
I just
enough.
don't feel like that. And I don't think they have to be. I don't think there's anything. I think
agree.
you can just have them as the leads of the movie without them being a couple. And so, yeah, their stuff I think is even worse than this. But
yes,
once again, I like you, I like them. They continue her sort of arc in this. I think some people have complained that it feels a bit too much of a 160 for her to suddenly be like a dinosaur rights character, but
no, I think it doesn't, given what happened in the previous movie.
It makes sense. I guess they're just pointing out then at the start of the movie, she was so of the last movie, she was so far away from that. It opens like when I like the fact that they're treating it as a real world issue where they're trying to poke at like, should we treat them as you know, regular animals where you have rights and you're trying to like stick up for them and defend them and you know, stop horrible people from like treating them badly. And because obviously one of the points that's been made throughout these movies, especially the first one, is that there's an argument then dinosaurs naturally died out and became so you should just leave it as that, you know. That is the deal. They didn't survive, but once they come back and once, you know, they're kind of making an impact on society, and obviously this, particularly these new movies are going for an angle where they can be a bit more sympathetic.
Yes.
I mean, it's not that they're unsympathetic in the original movie, because, hey, it's not really, it's the fault of the people who chose to experiment in the first.
Yes, it's human error.
Like, on a basic monster movie level, in some ways, the dinosaurs are the villains. But that's something that has changed over time. And even in that movie, they obviously showed that there were different degrees. You know, they showed that there were dinosaurs who you could maybe interact a bit more with and were a bit more like, not as aggressive. If dinosaurs were around again, you imagine that these sorts of debates would be happening.
Yes.
And another thing I do appreciate, I probably agree with you that they show too many dinosaurs in the movie, but I at least appreciate that we see different kinds of dinosaurs that we've not seen.
Yes. Yeah, so the Maisie storyline and the reveal around her and the kind of almost retcon that Hammond had a partner. Did you think it worked? Did you not like the retcon? Like, what were your thoughts just surrounding that storyline?
I like it. Not too bad, just because there's no reason why he wouldn't have a partner.
Yeah, I agree.
And I guess you could just read it as like maybe Hammond did most of the public appearances and the partner was more in the background. Maybe you could just sort of, but I kind of get why people might be bothered and see it as a retcon, but it didn't really bother me like that much. And yeah, the Maisie stuff is that's good. No, I like that stuff. Be using dinosaur DNA and to recreate dinosaurs. Then why wouldn't you at some point use it for a human? So
yeah,
that's obviously
I quite
the
like
reveal
that
she's a clone.
I liked that reveal. I liked the way they played it with, the James Cromwell character. He always had that photo album that she couldn't look in, and how he was always talking about her mother and her mother doing this. And then, there were little hints, like the way the housekeeper, when Maisie says bath, she's like, no, bath, girl. They're trying to make it so that she speaks with the English accent, not the American accent. And then, the reveal that she is a human clone. And then there are also some little hints that she might actually be part dinosaur, possibly part raptor. Like, they have a few hints in there that, that there might be something else in the mix. The first time we ever see Maisie, she's introduced very similarly to the way the raptors are. You see her moving through like grass and like flipping, moving quickly past her housekeeper. When she watches the video of Owen with like the little baby raptors, which how cute and also terrifying, but also really cute are the baby raptors. Like, you look at the baby raptors and you're like, oh, they're such cute little killing machines, but they're so cute. So I like the little hints that maybe there is something else going on. And I thought, because you're right, like, you're going to start cloning extinct animals. Where are you going to go next? So I think the idea of like a human clone is very, very interesting. And I thought that reveal worked really well. And like I said, I think the fact that Owen and Claire end up taking her at the end, and becoming her guardians or whatever, that would have worked so much better if they'd actually been a couple. Because now I have to believe that these two people who don't really have anything in common and haven't really been together are suddenly going to raise a child together. That doesn't really.
Well, I think they were together, weren't they? They just broke up again.
Yeah, but they broke up
at the end of Jurassic World. They sort of.
But that's what I'm saying. Like, I feel like they should have kept them together, and I feel like it would have worked just as well, probably better, if they were still together. But Owen was a bit disgruntled that Claire was still trying to work over dinosaurs, and maybe he wanted to settle down and have a family, and so then it would have led into them ending up with a family at the end of the movie. And I just think that would have tied it together just better than what we actually got. Because like you, I'm not invested in the Owen and Claire relationship, mostly because I don't think it's written very well. Again, I think Chris and Bryce, I think they've got okay chemistry. I don't think their chemistry is. Yeah, I don't think it's so bad that you can't see them together. It's just more that they just seem to write them so badly. And I just think it would have been better if they'd actually been together in this one. But
the twist is good. It's well played. I do like the Maisie character. I think the actress is good, likable. And it's that thing of it's a proactive, teen character. Pre-teen team. I think she was a teen, but it's proactive. It's good to see. Yes. You don't see enough with teenage characters in movies.
Like I really like the scene where one of the great horror scenes is obviously when she's cowering in her bed and the Indoraptor comes in and you've got that beautiful shot of it, like, again, reaching out for her. And then Owen comes in to save her, but then she leads him outside, remember, and she's leading him along the ledge of the house. So like you said, things like that, being very proactive and actually participating in her own rescue is very fun. And I think all of those scenes towards the end with the Indoraptor, a great kill as well. You've got, speaking of villains, you've got that horrible character who is so useless. The one who collects like the teeth of all the animals, and he keeps going around trying to get like teeth of all the dinosaurs.
Oh, okay.
He's like a mercenary or something. Do you remember him?
Yeah, who plays him, right?
Yeah, who is it?
It's the guy out of Silence of the Lambs. It's Well, is it what? No, what's his name?
Oh my God, it is
Phil,
true. Ted Levine.
That's him. Yeah, that's him.
I didn't even recognize. Oh my God, it's Buffalo Bill.
Buffalo Bill. That's it.
Oh wow. I didn't even recognize. He looks so different. I didn't even recognize him. But he gets a particularly nasty death, and I have to say, I absolutely love his death scene because I mentioned before that I love the Indoraptor. One of the things I love about the Indoraptor is it seems to have an awareness that the other dinosaurs don't. And in that scene, you see it actually toying with this character. So the Ted Levin character, he shot it with a tranq dart, and the Indoraptor plays dead, and I absolutely love that when he's trying to like get the teeth out, you see the tail come up. I mean, he looks and the tail goes down. And then you see the Indoraptor actually opens its eyes and looks directly at the camera. And then, of course, there's that horrifying scene where it bites its arm off and stuff. But I just thought, again, such a great horror scene. And the Indoraptor is just such a fun dinosaur because it actually has all of these little quirks and things that other dinosaurs haven't had. The Indoraptor actually feels like a monster, like an actual monster. Like you said before, the dinosaurs, for the most part, they're monsters to us, but they're just doing what comes naturally to them, you know? Yeah. Whereas the Indoraptor feels like he's actually evil, like there is something in it that has got an awareness and actually toys with people and is actually a bit sadistic. And I actually really like that because I think it's something new and different and really fun that they kind of went with in this movie. So I really like the Indoraptor and what they did and the design of it. And like I said, the fact that they go back to using animatronics for this movie, because the animatronics are just beautiful and they just work so well. And they just make those scenes so much more impactful when you can see that it's like a physical thing that they're working with. So yeah, I think that's a lot of fun.
Design's very good, and that scene you mentioned with Ted Levine's character, that's a good example of a really scummy villain getting his come really in the opening scene. That's almost like this movie's Jaws moment, I think, because there's a similar jump scare in Jaws like that. So I think, and once again, you've got the Spielberg link as well, so that works.
Yeah. So and like you said, the use of shadows in that scene is particularly good. Like when they send the bone up, the package up, and then you just see like the outline of the Mosasaurus going overhead. It's just such a great atmosphere, that opening scene. I think it's got a lot of tension, and it's such a great horror scene.
Yes, it's a strong opening. And one of those characters they bring back from the last film, don't they? I'm pretty sure he's the guy from... Like the younger guy, the one who gets in trouble when he's feeding the dinosaurs.
Yes. I think that's the same. I'll have to rewatch it, but I think you might be right. Yeah.
Yeah. But just on the Goldblum stuff, I agree. It's quite a good use of him, and I like that they don't overuse him.
Yes.
The only thing with the speech is he doesn't really say much of anything. It's a bit of he doesn't really come down that strongly on one side or the other. So that's probably...
With Malcolm, a character like Malcolm, he would be more like assertive and stuff. Yeah, no, I get what you're saying. They could have maybe made him a bit punchier and a little bit more determined.
And I guess they wanted him at the end to recreate the line from the original, except now it's "Welcome to Jurassic World" instead of.
I did actually like that. And I did like that they used his voiceover at the end. I thought that was fitting.
I guess I don't mind it. It's a little on the cheesy side, maybe, but I guess I don't mind it too much. And it's probably a good use of him. Then he kind of bookends it rather than him being in it like too much.
Yes.
Watching the trailers and that, would have expected a bigger cameo.
Oh, we all did, because they used him so much in the trailer. They really weaponized the fact that they were bringing back Jeff Goldblum and used him. But like I said, I think it worked out well because I think that his one scene does make an impact, and I think it's used quite well. And like you said, they don't overuse him. It's not like a look, we have Jeff Goldblum movie. It's just he's. I think he described it as like his contribution was like the cherry on top of the cake. It was just that last little bit to kind of finish it off, just a little flourish that kind of added to it. There is one other, this is another scene that I just wanted to talk about to see what you thought of it. So we both agree that the island scenes definitely get dragged out a bit too long and drag the movie down. But what did you think of the scenes when they're actually on the truck and they're trying to attend to Blue, because Blue gets injured when she gets captured, and there's that whole scene where they have to do the blood transfusion with the T-Rex, and you have that scene where Owen and Claire actually have to climb into the T-Rex's cage, which is a very, very tiny like box, and they have to do the blood transfusion. That again uses an animatronic, and I found I quite liked that scene. I thought it was quite tense and worked quite well. What did you think of like all of those scenes there on the boat?
Yeah, well, I mean, I'll comment on that and then we'll jump back again. But okay, I like that stuff. I think that stuff is is on point, and
Yeah.
it makes a lot of sense, and it's very well done. And again, it does go to the characters, and yeah, no, I think that's good. Again, I think we keep having this. I think we have this discussion where we're not quite sure how we feel about them making the raptors cute and cuddly.
Yeah.
We feel that's portraying them a little bit, and him having a connection to one because he's brought him up, I guess, is fine. But whether it should be, then these that are now have gone from the most dangerous of the dinosaurs to the most friendly. That doesn't feel quite right. Animal, if you get them from a young age, you could train them, but it's sort of debatable. If it's in their DNA, then it might be hard to really overcome,
Exactly.
So.
Yeah. And I think they do mention in the first movie, I think he does actually say, that he imprinted on them when they were born. Like, literally, he was like the first thing they saw, and so that's how he raised them. But they also have this thing in this movie where they kind of try to make it so that Blue is like the exception. Like, when Maisie is watching the little video of the little raptors, they say something about like Blue being able to show like empathy or something like that, and it's like, again, it's like I kind of understand what you're trying to say, but by the same token, this is a raptor. This is like a killing machine, and you're trying to portray her as like, I don't know, empathetic and sympathetic. It doesn't quite work for me. Yeah.
So clunky if they were all like still a couple, because I don't really feel the motivation for him to have that change of heart where he suddenly decides to go. And once again, I don't like that as a setup. I don't like the scene with him watching like Blue on the video, because we're meant to assume that's what motivates him all of a sudden. And that's just a little bit weak to me, because he seems to have taken a clear stance.
Yes.
Once again, we have him acting quite jerky, which makes him quite unlikable. And I think, again, you've just got some tropey stuff. Like the comedy beat with him waking up drunk when he's already in the back of the thing. And like, oh, what are you doing here? And it's dumb. It's dumb.
It is dumb. And when I found out that they'd broken them up again, and I think with Owen and Claire, they have a real problem of telling, not showing. So instead of like showing us that they just drifted apart, they have that scene where they sit down in the bar and they literally spell out what happened in their relationship. And they do the same thing in the first one. They literally spell out that they had a bad date. It's like you don't always have to tell us everything. Sometimes we can just, audiences aren't dumb. Sometimes we can just figure out what's going on. And I feel like with regards to the Owen and Claire relationship, they treat us as being really stupid. Like, again, I'll go back to the original film. Ellie and Grant are a couple in the original film, right? They don't smack us in the face with it. They just show us through little interactions that they have that they are obviously a couple, but they don't sit us down and spell it out that these two are dating. Whereas that's what they do with Owen and Claire, and it doesn't work. And that scene where she goes to find him at the cabin, and once again he's negging her again, and they're just so antagonistic, and it doesn't work for me. It's just a flat scene, and I agree with you that his motivation seems a little bit off. Like, maybe if they hinted that he missed Blue or that he'd been thinking of her, but like you said, he goes from being staunchly 100% against it, saying, no, I'm not going to come, to suddenly watching one video and being like, oh yeah, maybe I'll tag along. Whereas if they'd been a couple, it could have been like, I don't want to go, but I'm not going to let you go by yourself, kind of thing,
We're still a couple. Then there's nothing to say then he wouldn't have been involved in her kind of company, and or at the very least, like, you could see that it wouldn't be so hard convincing him to go along if they were still a couple. Action scenes on the island are weaker than any other action scene in the movie.
They really are.
Because also it's a little bit cheesy, when he's like meant to be paralyzed, Owen, and he's trying to roll out the way in slow motion. That looks really bad, and
it does.
Some of that stuff with the lava I didn't really like the lava looks CGI.
It
sort of
looks
lava.
CGI. There's no way a human can be that close to lava and not have some sort of effect. And I'm pretty sure at some point in time, you actually see his hand land in the lava, which means his hand should be nothing but bone, because lava is nothing to fuck with, man. Like, you don't want to get near that stuff. And I know it's a movie and we're supposed to, employ willing suspension of disbelief, but sometimes there's things where it's like, no, you need to think this through.
It sort of crosses a line a bit.
Yeah. You're right. That part was comedic. And then the part a little bit later where he comes running down the hill with all the dinosaurs and he's like, run! Again, that came across as like weirdly funny when it was actually supposed to be quite a dangerous situation. And it just didn't work.
Bit too cheesy, that stuff. And
definitely.
It's just not as effective as like the second half of the movie and all the opening scene where you get some really good horror moments.
Yeah, I know that they had to get the dinosaurs off the island as it's part of the story, but I really feel like they could have condensed that whole sequence into about half the time that it took. We didn't need the excessive, like you said, it is cool to see different varieties of dinosaurs, but by the same token, it felt a little bit like they were like, how many dinosaurs can we get on screen at the one time? It's like, well, you don't have to put them all on screen, like, let's show a little bit of restraint. But yeah, I think the scenes on the island definitely are the weakest part of the film, and they are quite weak, but I think the rest of the film, for me, makes up for it, because it is so entertaining. And again, like we've said, it actually does something new, and we actually have like a new set piece and a completely new setting that's a lot of fun to work with. I think the mansion setting was a really, really good idea, and works really well. But yeah, that bit on the island definitely drags the film down.
The film could have been shorter because
like,
if you say then the best stuff is in the second half, and it's quite cool, they have this bottle style movie in this one location, and so I just wonder if you made it a shorter movie, then most of the movie could have just been at the mansion anyway.
Yes.
Like, maybe they just thought it would have been a bit stretched out if it was all at the mansion, but you obviously could have had some of what you got at the beginning. Like, you could have still had the opening scene, you could have still had the stuff with the politics, you could have had some of it, but yeah, I think you either have a really quick, it's quite brief at the island, not as long as it is, or maybe you just lose the island stuff altogether. And I mean, I don't know exactly how you would do it, but you can obviously rewrite the plot to make it so that most of it is.
Yeah, it maybe just could have worked with them going to the island, rescuing the dinosaurs, and then realizing the betrayal once they got back to the mainland, as opposed to realizing the betrayal on the island, because it was the betrayal on the island that led to all of this sequence, because they locked Claire and Franklin in the room and they left Owen for dead. Whereas if they just got them to help them get everything off the island and then they find out the betrayal, maybe when they're on the truck, maybe when they get to the mansion, I think that would have been better and would have cut the film down a lot, and then we wouldn't have had to spend so much time on the island, because that really is the lowest point of the film, is that those scenes on there.
Yeah, because the movie's just over 2 hours long, and I do wonder if a rule of thumb for these sorts of movie is then 90 minutes, 100 minutes, that seems like a good running time for this sort of movie. Many times you don't really need them going over 2 hours. So Franklin is that he does rescue the vet later on. I think that's his one moment where he's got a little one moment. But that's about it. And as I said, she wasn't too bad. Like,
it actually felt like she had a place in the movie, like you can understand why they took. I know that they said that like Franklin was like the electronics guy, but you really could have just written him out and Claire could have just accessed the system instead. Whereas Zia, she's actually a vet. She actually saves Blue's life. She is actually proactive in a lot of things. So yeah, I felt like she had a place in the movie. But Franklin, like you said, it felt like he was there for comic relief, but he actually wasn't that funny.
And unfortunately, the comedy wasn't very good. Yeah.
Exactly, yeah. So, yeah, no, Franklin definitely you could have gotten rid of.
The BD Wong character. I'm a little frustrated that they keep insisting on making this character a villain, because he wasn't really a villain in the original movie.
No, he's just a scientist.
And I feel it's just their way of justifying keeping him around, but...
Yeah.
Like I said, I think probably I can see why they used him in the last movie, but
No, that makes sense because
I
he'd be
think that should
engineering
have
more
been it then.
dinosaurs. Yes,
I don't
yes.
think they need to keep bringing him back, and
Mm.
I don't know why they insist on him being a villain. You know,
Yeah.
because if he's not a villain back in the first movie, there's no reason why he's suddenly going to change into an arsehole. You know, like because he's already like a full-grown adult in the first movie, and there's nothing really to suggest. So I think that feels a bit forced, and they keep trying to make him feel of a villain.
I agree. And at least, like you said, like he does feel like he kind of fits in Jurassic World because, well, they've opened a new park. They need to breed new dinosaurs. And he was obviously, a big part of the dinosaur breeding the dinosaurs in the first movie. So that makes sense. But for him to still be working with a shady corporation and still designing dinosaurs, which clearly are not going to be used for a park, which clearly are only going to be used for nefarious goods, like, it's like, like at this point, it's like he's really crossed over into villain territory. Whereas in the other ones, he just feels more like a scientist that's got a lot of arrogance and has maybe taken things a bit too far. And that was kind of the cautionary tale of him. Whereas here, he clearly knows he's crossing lines. He clearly knows that this dinosaur that he's designed is going to be used for a weapon. Why is he suddenly like into full-on villainy? You're right, it doesn't really track with his character. Interestingly enough, in the book, he actually dies. So it's interesting that his character has actually been dragged out over
in the
pretty much the series. Yeah, because in the original Jurassic Park book, he actually dies a fairly nasty death. And so it's interesting that like a character that died in the original novel has become like one of the main characters of the franchise almost because he's in so many of the movies. But I agree that in this movie, he doesn't really have a place. They really could have just replaced him with like another scientist or just someone else who was working with them. Because, like you said, this pretty much firmly puts him in villain territory, which he wasn't in before. He was just in like arrogant scientist territory.
You don't need another villain in this movie. You've already got two. Sadly, they're not very good. Really fine just to have characters who are like in the middle, who are not strongly like, they're not obviously the heroes of the movie, but they're also not like the villains of the movie. It's good to have these sort of middle ground style characters, because you had that with the Samuel L. Jackson character in the first one, where he was like perfectly likable and you could tell he was a good guy and everything, but he's obviously more of a middle ground character where he's obviously not the big hero of the movie, but he's certainly not a villain either. And it's fine to have that in these movies, because naturally in these companies you will just get guys who are just doing their jobs, and you know, it's not, they're not necessarily the corrupt assholes who are like driving the whole thing. Shame we didn't get more of James Cromwell, but it's always good to see him. And I guess I was quite impressed they went as dark with him being killed off. That scene was pretty dark.
That was pretty intense, wasn't it? Yeah.
Because I figured he was going to do something, but I probably didn't expect. I mean, I guess you could source it, but I guess I wasn't quite sure in this sort of movie if they would go that far, maybe, is what I'm saying.
Yeah.
But yeah, the twist with Maisie, as we've said, was good.
Yes.
And I think also then it motivates her with that final thing, doesn't it?
Yes.
The fact that she's the one who makes the decision
to release the dinosaurs.
Because that's a good scene. Like that's a good scene with stakes on it and things riding, where you can definitely see Claire's dilemma and like why she can't quite do it. But then you can understand why Maisie does it, because she has this connection to these things.
Well, it's like she says, they're alive, just like me. You know, if she's a clone and she has the right to live, then why don't they have the right to live too? I also think that scene is a really good combination of Claire's arc for this movie, because a big thing for Claire this movie is her trying to make amends. And like you mentioned, you said that some of the fans think that maybe she went too far, but I think that's actually the point. I think that's the point of her character, to show that she's trying so hard to make up for her mistakes that she's maybe not seeing the whole picture. That's why she's taken in so easily by the Rafe Spall character. That's why she's so willing to go back to the island. So I think, you know, that moment, it's like, is this too far? Do I let these dinosaurs go? Will that redeem me? Or do I have to actually make the hard choice now and realize that my redemption cannot come at the cost of, you know, of causing more damage. So I really like that scene where Claire realizes, no, this is too far. This is not about me anymore. And then, yes, that little reveal that it's actually Maisie who does it, I think is actually a really good little ending. And then, of course, we get that spectacular montage at the end, which just promises like a completely different world, you know, with that Jeff Goldblum voiceover where we see the dinosaurs actually in the real world. You know, we see the pterodactyls and we see the raptors and we see that beautiful shot of the T-Rex roaring at the lion. I just think because every other movie has ended the same way. You escape the island, voila, we're done. Whereas this is like, wow, you know, the world is actually changed. We've actually changed the status quo. The dinosaurs are actually now existing with us. And I think that's a really fun ending. And again, something very different. And I think that is this film's biggest strength, is that it actually tries something new.
Yeah.
Does it always succeed? Maybe not. It maybe stumbles a little bit here and there. But the fact that it was bold enough to do something new, to actually change up the status quo and actually mix up the movies a bit, I think is what makes this movie, for me, at least, really fun. And I can forgive a lot of its flaws because it actually, at least it's brave, you know, it's bold, it's trying something different, and it's not just relying on nostalgia to kind of carry the movie through. So I think that's a lot of fun.
Just in how this differs from that point of view from the original trilogy, because I think part of the reason this film ends how it ends is because it is viewed as a trilogy. Like, it is viewed as, you know, this is then setting up the final film. Whereas I sort of feel the three original movies just felt like they were separated almost, where
like they were just sequels, not part of a trilogy.
Just sequels. Whereas I think this was a planned trilogy. So that's interesting, and I think that's something which is just, I mean, obviously in the past you've had trilogies, but I think with some of these nostalgia sequels, that feels like, I think it's a modern thing just because you kind of reboot it with the first movie. So then I think the natural thing to do now is just you tend to continue it on and like, I mean, a bit like we're sort of seeing with the Scream movies at the moment, where the same team will do all three, or and same with obviously the Halloween recent trilogy. So, but as we said, this is very much Colin Trevorrow's trilogy in many ways, because he's directs two of them and he's involved in the writing in this one. So, it's an interesting movie. It's very conflicting in many ways. As I said, this was my first time, so it was, But like you, I do like they take chances. Orphanage, that early movie by the director, I do recommend.
Yes, I will have to check that. It's been on my to-watch list for a while. I actually tried to watch it recently, but the version I downloaded didn't have subtitles, so that obviously did not work. So I'll have to see if I can find it on a streaming service. But I do want to watch that because I've heard it's fantastic. And like I said, knowing that he's got a horror background makes so much sense, because I really do think this has the strongest horror themes since the original. And they're just so good.
Would you rate this one?
I think I'm going to give this a 7.5. Look, I can't give it like a really high rating because it does have some really obvious flaws, but it's fun. It's a fun movie. Like I said, I really, really love the change up. I love the mansion as a set piece. I think at the very least, Claire's character is still decent. Macy's a fun character. Like we have said, the villains are a little bit meh for this one, and that does drag it down a little bit. And Owen continues to be one of the most useless characters in this franchise. But I really love the gothic horror feel of the second half. Like I said, I love the dinosaur auction because it's just so ridiculous that it's just fun. The Indoraptor is fun. I think a lot of the production on this movie is really good, and the direction is really good. So I'm going to go with 7.5 because I think it's a really fun film. It obviously is not going to compare to the original. Nothing ever does. But this has been my favorite sequel so far.
I was going to say, I think that rating makes it your favorite sequel.
Yeah, definitely. So 7.5 from me. What about you?
Okay, well, I'm going lower because, as I said, it is a conflicting movie, and it is a little bit of a mixture of good and bad. And so, as I said earlier, some of the lows are like really low, but then you have really high highs. But I think my score maybe reflect that it's a first-time viewing as well, so it could go up on further viewing. So at the moment, I'll go a solid 6.5.
Okay.
It seems roughly right, because I do think, as I said, some of the bad stuff, and I think it does suffer from the overall quality of the characters. I think that is maybe a big problem. As I said last time, Chris Pratt is just miscast,
Yeah.
I just don't see him as this serious sort of action star.
No.
Enough good things in it where it's a solid movie, and yeah, definitely recommend checking it out, just because they do different things, and the horror in the movie and the dinosaur stuff, it is very good. Let us know your thoughts in the comments below. Like and subscribe. As always, share us out on social media. You can also support the channel on Patreon, so that's patreon.com/borednow. Just $1 a month, or as little as $1 a month if you want to help the channel out. I do commentaries, movie and TV commentaries. Also, little bonus things, like me and Rachel will be recording special Patreon exclusives in the future. So you can check out that stuff if you want to help the channel. But at this point, there's a decent little back catalogue of stuff on there. Speaking of, we sort of hinted at it there, but me and Rachel also do horror movie reviews. So we've done some of the big franchises. We've done the Halloween franchise, we've done Scream, we've done the Conjuring movies, we did the Fear Street trilogy, and we also do cinema releases if there's a new horror movie at the cinema that we both feel like checking out. Like we did Boogeyman recently, so that review is up now on the channel. So that's something we do, and yeah, look out for some of that stuff. But Rachel, if you want to promote your channel.
Guys, you can follow me, Rachel McDonald, video essays on TV shows and movies. I do have a trailer reaction to the Fallen Kingdom trailer if you guys are interested in Jurassic Park stuff. I don't know, probably maybe put some stuff up at some point. I would like to write a piece on Claire because she is so maligned in the fandom. But my Tumblr and my Twitter are also linked on my YouTube, and Keith usually puts a link in the description. So come and follow me everywhere.
Okay, thanks guys. Keep watching movies, and shouldn't be too long, but at some point we will be back with the third movie in this modern trilogy, so look out for that coming soon. But thanks for watching. See you guys again soon.